Islands. Of course, Cayman Law Road was there at the courthouse, live and direct to bring it to you. And of course, Mr. Johann Moxam was also there, one of the forerunners, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but certainly one of the organizers for the CPR group. And I think someone who's been incredibly instrumental in pushing forward the People's Initiated Referendum, which had an amazing day today. So Johann, for the people who may not have been paying attention to what transpired earlier this morning, let's just go ahead and recap for them precisely what happened.
Well, today we were successful in the outcome of getting a favorable ruling from the Grand Court on the judicial review matter. It was brought by Ms. Shirley Ralston, who's a member of the CPR group, against the Cayman Islands government. Effectively, her action was to query the validity of their actions in the drafting of the referendum bill. CPR and Ms. Shirley, from the outset, and we started this journey, I would dare say, 17, 18 months ago. It feels like forever now when you think about it. Started this journey where we wanted, one, what's best for Cayman, which is a fair, equitable, reasonable, and best situation, best sort of referendum law, best referendum process. We reached out again to the government, the Premier, Cabinet, on 8 occasions. None of those letters were ever acknowledged, none were responded to. We put our positions in writing. The pre-claim letter that was submitted to the Premier, to Cabinet, to the Governor, everything that was written in those letters, and especially on the cusp of the legal challenge, has now been proven to be correct by the Grand Court, by Justice Owen in his ruling. Again, I think...
Let's back up a little bit here.
Okay.
I want to break it down for, because these are some very complex legal arguments, first of all, and it was not, just a simple case. But I think some people don't understand some of the basics of what transpired. So Shirley Ralston is obviously one of a number of persons involved in CPR. Why did Shirley bring the legal challenge?
Because CPR Cayman, as a not-for-profit organization, could not bring the challenge. We had to find a individual to act in their personal capacity. Shirley Ralston nominated herself, exposed herself to potential significant consequences. That's why the protective cost order application was so important. Had that protective cost order not been granted, we would not, or Shirley would not have been able to proceed to the judicial review application. Okay. So this case is historic on 2 fronts. The awarding of a protective cost order that then afforded Ms. Ralston the opportunity to move forward to get to the stage of applying for a judicial review of the government's actions, and specifically their referendum law that we felt was unconstitutional for a myriad of different reasons.
Okay, so protective cost order is?
Effectively, it's an order from the court whereby the individual applies to explain their personal circumstances, their financial circumstances, that they should not be discriminated against in moving forward with this matter. Again, if you look back to the Tower Rivers and Hewitt case, exactly. You saw where the Hewitts, or Ms. Velma Hewitt, lost that case in the Grand Court, and then sometimes later, Minister Tower Rivers sought cost from Mrs. Hewitt. Yep. At that stage, it's that sort of significant outlay and repayment of cash that could potentially bankrupt an individual. So it was important that we pursue an opportunity to protect Ms. Shirley from that sort of eventuality. And again, we were fortunate enough, again, having very, very good lawyers in the form of Kate McLeod from Broadhurst LLC, and Mr. Chris Butler from the Matrix Chamber in the UK. So at that stage, the application was successful. It was accepted. Ms. Shirley was able to then get her protective cost order to move to the next stage.
Okay. So thank you so much for explaining that, because I was going to bring up the situation with Minister Rivers and the Hewitts, because essentially she was seeking to enforce her costs against the Hewitts, who the only thing of substance that they had was their home, and I think since then they've even ended up leaving the jurisdiction. So I don't know if they're technically bankrupt as a result of that, but this type of a case has the potential to bankrupt the parties who are bringing it, because, you know.
Very much so, and that's what the government rely on. The government understand that they've got access to limitless amounts of money and funds and resources. So the idea is to frustrate the individual. Everybody seems to threaten judicial review or some form of legal action, but very few are able to come up with the funds in order to bring the action, but more importantly, the funding should you be unsuccessful and costs are awarded against you. That's why the protective cost order was so important in this case, because then that set up Ms. Shirley to give her the confidence to move on to the judicial review application.
Absolutely. Wonderful. All right, so there's been a little bit of misunderstanding about why even mount this legal challenge. So I had a question put to me today that someone thought it was counterproductive to go forward with the judicial review when the CPR group had so much momentum going already, and it looked like you guys were going to actually win the referendum. What do you say to those persons who don't quite understand the reasoning why?
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. It's not for me to say that I'm right and you're wrong or vice versa, but what I will say this: the legal strategy that was devised and was put in place has been now found to be the correct course of action by virtue of the order and the ruling of Justice Owen in today's decision. Although we were also confident that we could get to the stage where, if the referendum had happened on December the 19th, we felt comfortable that we would be successful with the final outcome. However, before you get to that level of arrogance, for the want of a better word, because nothing is certain until the final ballot is counted. We knew and we felt, because the reason why we started this action was, if you're going to have Cayman's first people's initiated referendum, which is triggered by getting 25% of the total number of registered voters as per Section 70 of the Cayman Islands Constitution, 2009, it's important, if you are going to be a part of that organization or initiative or effort, that the first time you do it properly. Again, the government, we felt, were haphazard, inconsistent, and did their usual ad hoc cut and paste job to suit their agenda, to suit their objectives, to suit their sort of desires, without putting together a general framework, law, and something that could guide the referendum process, whether it be for this first people's initiated referendum or any that follow. Again, history will show that we were correct in the decision that we made. The ruling today is evidence of that, because what the government did was they effectively cut and paste parts of different legislation, whether it be the elections law and some other legislation, cutting out the sections that they didn't want to deal with, for instance, campaign financing and so on and so forth. Things that would traditionally be formed in part of a general law, because they were in the driver's seat, setting the questions, setting the rules, so on and so forth, and always moving the goalposts, they felt that they could push through a referendum law or a bill that became a law that would be to their advantage. Again, one of the 8 letters or 2 of the 8 letters that were written by CPR to the Premier was, "Sir, we have legitimate concerns about the referendum bill." You'll recall that once the bill was being debated in the House, None of the government bench debated the merits of the bill. They spent more time castigating and besmirching the character of people and basically trying to convince the country that everybody associated with CPR were trying to destabilize the government and just persons of bad character or of negative sort of intentions, instead of discussing the merits of the bill, the substance of the bill, the details of the bill. And that's what you do when you're deflecting from the main issues. You always attack the messengers instead of the process and the substance of what you're doing. Again, I can say this, I've said it previously, and I'm even more comfortable in saying it now. Every concern that we expressed as a result of that referendum bill, which became the referendum law, Justice Tim Owens ruled that we, as an organization, and Ms. Shirley, as the person bringing the action in her personal capacity, were correct. So for those persons who felt that maybe you should have proceeded with the referendum, it's more important to get the rules right so that the process makes sense all the way through, instead of allowing the government to dictate to you a set of rules that they can chop and change that are inconsistent and solely to their benefit. Because let's face it, the government aren't interested in hearing from the people. The government have a set sort of agenda, and by hook or by crook, they were prepared to work through that agenda and drive this project and any other thing on their list down our throats. That's why it was important to devise a legal strategy, implement that legal strategy, and utilize the courts to hopefully find in our favor. And what I'm most proud about is the government have access to so much, so many lawyers, so much money, so much time. This initiative is a grassroots initiative led by regular people. Nobody is the boss, nobody's the general, nobody is more important than the next. We work together. We are a diverse group of Caymanians and long-term residents who effectively have concerns about the direction that our country is going in, the direction that the government wanted to pursue with regards to this project, and the fact that they were prepared to do it in such a haphazard way that really wasn't reflective of the best practices, best precedents. They were making this up as they go along. I'll give you an example. We had when you signed the petition, we had a verification process. Now, we knew that that was a very thorough verification process. We were confident that that would go well. During the verification process, you had the Premier and the Deputy Premier and members of their government actively telling people on Radio Cayman and in their meetings that you should unverify your verified signature because there were no rules or guidelines to basically control who came on or came off the list. And at that stage, you realize that their desperation would cause them to say and do just about anything. So it's important that you have, with this ruling now, clear instructions that in any referendum situation, there must be a general law that is compatible with the Constitution and the intent, whereby the details are in place so that there's consistency, there's objectivity, and there's fairness. And that's what the people represent, which the government fought against.
Okay, so two takeaways from what you've just said. Number one, it was important to set a precedent, not just in this particular instance, but going forward in any instance where you have a people-initiated referendum, because there are rules and procedures that have to be consistent with the Constitution, and that's just the bottom line. Number two, in summary, the government of the Cayman Islands now fully understands, hopefully, that the people have the power, despite the fact that they may have all of their available resources and expertise on the one hand. Ultimately, the people will be heard. So, after the decision today, what was the feeling like? Like, I've been part of litigation where you have gone up against the giants and you've won. Sometimes it's elation, sometimes it's a sense of relief. Right after you heard the decision, what emotions did you personally feel as part of the CPR group?
I was happy for Shirley, who I think is truly a modern day national hero. Her patriotism, love of country, her principled position, and positivity. She exemplifies what I think CPR represents. But I was happy for her first. I was happy for all of the persons who signed the petition, because this thing would never have gotten off the ground without each and every person that signed the petition. You all played a role in what has been a historic decision based on your actions. I thought of the volunteers, the people that have given their time, their energy, their resources, their support to take a movement that started with 6 people and turn it into thousands of Caymanians who really are concerned about the direction that the government were taking with regards to the proposed cruise berthing project, but more importantly, the referendum process, which again was very haphazard, ad hoc, and done deliberately to advance their agenda. But selfishly, I will say I was glad that we were vindicated in the courts of law, because the positions that we've taken have been principled positions that have been well researched, that have been in the best interest of the type of country I want to live in, the type of system I want for my leaders to operate in, and more importantly, it now brings a sense of balance to the entire equation, that just because you're elected doesn't mean you now have the right to do what you want, when you want, how you want, because for every Caymanian that says, there's nothing I could do about it, you know, it's a done deal. Ladies and gentlemen, the decision today is evidence that if you galvanize yourself, if you organize yourself, and if you have the right sort of intent and dedication to a cause, you can make a difference, and you do not have to be elected in the LA. More people, average people, regular people contributed to the success of today's decision than those persons who are elected to serve, and those in the ministries who take home big salaries to try and hoodwink and effectively operate under the charade of transparency and accountability. This was a decision that speaks to people power, people working together, people having a plan, and people raising their legitimate concerns in a respectful, organized manner, utilizing the courts, which is the only thing the government really respects, to demonstrate we will not go gently into the night. This is our Cayman, this is our home, we will have our say. They will try to dissuade you, they will try to fight you down, they will try to disparage you, your character, your group. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it for the right reasons, and if you can push through and find attorneys who are prepared to work at a reasonable cost, because this does take money, but if you compare the resources of the government versus the fact that Shirley and CPR were able to fund this legal challenge based on the donations, time, energy, and resources of average Caymanians. I'm talking people that would donate $25, people that would donate $100, people that donated a couple $1,000, so on and so forth. But this was truly a movement of the people, paid for by the people, with the intent of benefiting the entire country, but more importantly, standing up to an administration that don't understand they represent us. They don't represent Royal Caribbean and Carnival Cruise Lines. They're supposed to represent the people, and every decision they made, all of their collective actions basically drove the people to become a tighter unit, whereby you work harder, you bear down, and you push through to get to the stage where we could bring the judicial review challenge. Shirley being the tip of the spear, and the individual who took the chance of leading the charge in her own name. And I was just grateful that we now have a marker in history whereby when anybody tells you you can't do it, you can't challenge the government, you can't fight the government, you can't be right against the government. Ladies and gentlemen, February 19th, 2020 is living proof that Shirley Ralston and her team did it the right way.
Okay. You mentioned that the government only seems to respect the courts, or some of us who don't necessarily agree with that position, because now we understand that the Premier fully intends to actually appeal this decision. When you heard that, I mean, what were your sentiments? I mean, we've seen it with quite a few different legal challenges. You know, I'm not sure that the premier does respect the court or the people for that matter.
You know, at a personal level, nothing the premier does surprises me. He's proven himself consistently to be a hypocrite, a liar, and a coward. And I say those things because I have been the subject of his malicious actions, where he used parliamentary privilege during the entire referendum bill debate to concoct a story that I was a part of a bid for the port in 2012. I did not know that I was a part of the bid until the premier said so, but that's the level of desperation. That is the malicious intent that he demonstrates towards anybody that is prepared to challenge him, not kiss his ring and tell him that he's the prettiest girl at the ball. So nothing he does surprises me. This potential appeal that they are lodging is consistent with the arrogance and narcissistic attitude displayed by a government that is run amok, that is prepared to fight the people. Now, I respect and I understand that it's part of the legal process, but if I were them and all of this has happened, at no step along the way have CPR been proven wrong. Everything the government has done has now been proven to be incorrect, unfair, incompatible with the law and the intent, yet they embarrass themselves further by spending public funds, public resources, time and money that could be dedicated to other priorities to continue to fight the people. That is who they are, and I believe this. Whenever people tell you who they are and show you who they are, believe them. So I think it's another sign of the consistency and the disconnect that the premier, the deputy premier, and the cabinet of the Cayman Islands have, because Alden McLaughlin alone can't make this decision. His cabinet members are complicit and have to sign up to this agenda, and for no one to say, hold on, do we really want to fight the people more, spend more public funds, and potentially embarrass ourselves further? The fact that this cabinet can sign up to this potential appeal that the premier has said that they'll be pursuing, that speaks to them collectively. Now, the fish rots at the head, that much I'm sure of, but nothing the premier does surprises me. We had an incident on Saturday at Smith Barcadere where the Minister of Planning stood before a crowd of 200 people and blatantly lied and then said it was just miscommunication. That's what they do. Coincidentally, I understand the Minister of Planning is the next potential head of the party, but apparently it's the power that causes them to say and do desperate things in order to try and hoodwink the people. Their willingness to misrepresent the facts, to mislead, and to lie to the public knows no limits. That's why they're facing the sort of opposition that they're facing from groups like CPR and other private citizens. That's why they're going to have a potential challenge down at the Smith Barcadere project, because anytime you lie and anything you do in the dark must come to light. Their advantage is they've got a lot of public funds to waste on things like appeals instead of, what is it they say on the street? Take the L, sit down, and understand that the people are now finally waking up to the reality of who you guys are, who they represent because of their collective actions.
Some people have expressed to me this afternoon that they are of the opinion that if the cabinet members, and again these are elected officials, have any desire or hope to continue representing the people of the Cayman Islands beyond 2021, that they should really be leading the charge to call a vote of no confidence against the premier. What are your thoughts on that particular,
I know one
discussion?
or two. I know one or two of the cabinet members well. There's only one or two of them that I think have the sort of intellectual capability and character or integrity to have that sort of thought and have that discussion, but the way the government is run, there's no chance in the world they're going to sign up to that, because the Premier runs a tight ship, and they are yes men, for the want of a better word. Their concern isn't country. Their concern is self and power. And it's based, and the reason why I'm comfortable in saying that, if you know that everything that you've been doing is wrong to this point, at what point don't you say, Mr. Premier, you've gotten the last 5 decisions really wrong. Maybe you shouldn't be so invested in this decision, bearing in mind you won't be the Premier in 2021 and we have to survive politically. But that takes character, that takes substance, that takes depth, that takes courage, that takes real leadership. And sadly, too few of them, or too many of them, are more interested in self-preservation, power and position than doing the right thing for the Cayman Islands. So
That's
I
very sad.
don't think like them.
Yes.
I don't think like them at all. Listen, this is the best country in the Caribbean. I can't say that I understand, but I know this much. Most of them would never see the type of money, compensation, perks, quality of life that they have. This being a minister is the apex of their life for, I would dare say, 80% of them.
Yes.
So therefore, they're going to scratch and claw and do whatever it takes to keep that level, because they're Cayman's version of celebrity. Most don't have suitable qualifications for the job that they're in. I would ask anybody in the business community, would you hire any of them? Start with the Director of Planning, work yourself down. Would you, with the Minister of Planning, work yourself down? Would you hire them to run your business? Would you hire them to be in partnership with you in your business? Would you hire them in any senior role in your organization? I'm willing to bet very few people will be as candid as me and say, yes, I think that they're capable enough to survive outside of politics, running a business in the private sector. So for them, surviving and maintaining that sort of 5-star political life is the most important thing. If the Anti-Corruption Commission was interested in looking at the activities of cabinet members or elected persons, look at their net worth before they got elected, look at their net worth whilst they're in cabinet, look at their net worth after they leave politics. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody serious about rooting out, corruption and negativity starts off with that basic exercise, we'd understand why certain decisions are made the way that they're made.
Wow, shocking.
It happens all over the world, but
Yes.
we expect better in Cayman because I keep saying it. No offense to anybody. I don't want to live in the next Jamaica. I don't want to live in the next Bahamas. I don't want to live in the next Bermuda. Cayman's a great place. We can change things in this country. Shirley Rolston, CPR, and other grassroots organizations challenging the government are proof of that. Sandra, you are public enemy number 1, but what you do makes a difference and impacts them. I don't agree with everything you do. I know there are a lot of people that fear you, but a lot of people fear the truth, and they fear the spotlight, and they fear people asking questions. But if you're doing the right things, and you're doing it for the right reasons, you have nothing to fear.
Exactly.
That's just how I think.
And, as we've been saying recently, the media is the 4th arm of government. I mean, we have a responsibility to keep them in check and to expose things that are happening. And, from just a little experience that I have, there's a lot of things that are happening, a lot that needs exposure. Listen, Johann Moxam, folks, you've been listening to Johann, one of the members of the CPR group. Again, another landmark day for them. They've had a few, being the first organization to be successful with a people-initiated referendum under the Constitution, and now again successfully taking the government on and challenging them with this Referendum Law 2019 that they pushed through very, very quickly last year. And we'll see where we go from here. So far, the Premier has indicated that they will be mounting another legal challenge, again, wasting more public funds, more public money, things that we need in education, social services, healthcare, and other areas. But stay tuned to Cayman Mall Road.
I just wanted to say, to your viewers and the people out there, you can make a difference. Every Caymanian can make a difference in Cayman, and every Caymanian working together with other Caymanians, we can create the type of country where everybody has a chance, but we got to start with having a clear vision, a clear plan. This administration are looking out for everybody else other than the majority. We need to be clear on what we want in education, in health care. The fact that the government are doing absolutely nothing to address the rising cost of living, the complexities of doing business in Cayman. Financial services is the lifeblood of the Cayman Islands, and you know, the Minister of Financial Services had one job. One job. We saw what the net result of that is. So again, it isn't about you wish bad on anybody, you want the best for your country, but obviously the people that are running the country are disconnected from the realities that the people face every day in life, in family life, in work, and so on and so forth. So don't ever think you can't make a difference. You can. You just need to have a plan, and you got to work together with your fellow Caymanian, whether they be first generation or 10, 20 generation Caymanian. This is our Cayman, and we got to work together because we can make a difference. Rulings like today prove that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. So folks, you know, United Front is what this is all about. And again, congratulations to the CPR group. Congratulations to Shirley, Johann, all the persons who were involved in that organization, who have really remained steadfast in their position and understood the importance of what they have been doing from day one. So folks, continue to stay tuned. We will continue to bring you updates on what is going on, where we are with the referendum. At this point, if the Premier mounts a legal challenge, we may not have it even in 2020. We'll see how that goes. But of course, we will be the first ones to bring you any available updates as we receive them. Johann, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.